Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries, and this is a response to a video tag video by Condor DM, and it's his GM/DMs question video. So I'm going to crack straight on with this, and the first question is, what do you call player agency? Well, player agency to me is giving the players a chance to shape the setting and the unfolding narrative of the game in conjunction with the GM, rather than me as GM simply creating everything wholesale and then handing it down to the players for them to interact with. I prefer this style of sort of collaborative play myself, since I think having more collective imaginative power working to create the world and the plots gives you more ideas to draw on and more chance of creating something really extraordinary. Question 2 is, what does railroading mean to you if you do apply it? If not, can you say why? Well, railroading to me is presenting players with only a single choice, or more often giving the illusion of choice, but all roads actually lead to the same destination. This can work if the illusion is strong enough, but often it's very easy for players to see through it and become disenchanted at the lack of control they have over their own characters' destinies. Now, like most GMs, I do use railroading on occasion to a certain degree, and any GM who says they don't use it at all is either lying or possibly a little bit deluded, in my opinion. But I try to keep it confined to flashbacks and events where the ending is predetermined. Because let's face it, if you're playing a flashback, you know certain things are going to happen, or have already happened, depending on how you look at it. So railroading doesn't feel quite so bad. I try and avoid it too much in the mainstay of the campaign though, just creating a stage for the players to interact with, and designing all of my plot around a list of events and outcomes that will occur if the players do not intervene. If they do intervene, then I alter the plot line to have the NPC, the organisation, the world element, whatever, react to how the PCs have interfered with it, and that may change the plot line entirely. Question 3 is, how does it feel for you when you've had a bad session? Well, whenever I've run what I consider to be a bad session, I always feel very disappointed, and I normally chide myself for not having done a better job. However, I do think it's very possible for a lot of GMs, myself included, to be very hard on ourselves and hold our games to an almost impossibly high standard. There's nothing wrong with seeing flaws and working on improving them. That's how you get better as a GM, after all. As long as you don't only see the things that have gone wrong, as long as you actually appreciate the things that you did right as well. And I think getting constructive feedback from your players is a very important part of doing this. Question 4 is, how do you handle bad players? What are some ways you would describe the behaviour of a bad player in your view? Well, a bad player to me is someone who does not appreciate the fact that role-playing is a group activity, and it's someone who proves detrimental to others' enjoyment or creates conflict between players. Now, please note when I say this, there are ways to play a conflicted or brusque character while still having them being an entertaining part of the game. Basically, as with a lot of things in life, a bad player is someone who's all about the me, never stopping to think about whether they could help other players and or their GM enjoy the game, in addition to themselves enjoying it, obviously. With bad players, I would generally have a word with them and attempt to suggest ways that the destructive behaviour could be curbed. After all, in some cases, they might not even realise what they're doing. If the bad player isn't willing to put any effort into making the game better and helping with everyone's enjoyment, including their own though, I certainly wouldn't feel guilty after a few sessions of not getting anywhere asking them to leave the game. Question 5. What's a good player in your opinion, and what are some of the things that good players do? Well, I've sort of already answered this in the last question if you reverse my answer, but to me, good players are someone who plays their own character to the best of their ability, but without losing sight of the fact that there are other players within the game. They're also proactive and they want to actively get involved in a game session. There's nothing wrong with someone who maybe isn't the best role player in the world if they're enthusiastic and they want to get involved. However, someone who just doesn't really seem interested and seems to half-arse it and is only really there to make up the numbers probably isn't the best player in the world, and you have to ask yourself seriously, are they contributing anything to the game? Question 6. How do you handle splitting up a group? If you do, and if not, can you say why? Well, if a group splits up, I generally jump back and forth between the two groups, alternating between them. Most groups generally realise that this is effectively halving their screen time, and they soon posse up as a group again. Question 7. What do you prefer more? Interaction, roleplay, combat, puzzles, traps, or a mixture? Well, I like a nice mix of combat and interaction. However, I'm really not a massive fan of puzzles or traps, unless they have a logical reason for existing in the setting. Dungeon crawls, in my opinion, are the primary culprit for this. For vast, nonsensical areas riddled with mind-boggling and equally nonsensical traps. If a trap or puzzle is just there to slow down the party or to use up resources in preparation for another encounter, then, to be honest, I'd rather it wasn't there. If, however, there's a logical reason for it existing that is internally consistent with the campaign world, then I've got no problems with it. Question number 8. Do you tinker with the rule set you use, or use it as it is written? Could you please explain why? Well, I generally use the rules as written, at least at first while I'm learning them, since I think until you've actually learned a rule system, you can't really start playing around with it without creating unforeseen effects. Although I do prefer rule sets with clearly written and uncomplicated rules that have future scope for customization, so that when I've got a good grasp of them, I can then look at tweaking them if necessary to better depict a certain genre or mood, or maybe to suit a particular group or game style better, for example. Question number 9 is, do you mind running NPCs with a group of player characters? Now, I don't mind running NPCs with a group of player characters, although I do try and keep them in the background as much as possible, since I firmly believe that the players are the stars of the show when it comes to RPGs. Question 10. What are your thoughts on campaigns and one-shots? Do you prefer one more than the other, or are you fine with either? Well, I tend to run more campaigns, mainly because that's how I started off in role-playing, and because the idea of a long-running game and watching plots, characters and worlds develop over time and change as they move through their own personal arcs really appeals to me. That said, I do tend to run more finite campaigns nowadays, given that long, sprawling campaigns with no defined goals tend to, at least in my experience, fizzle out before reaching any satisfactory or definite conclusion. I do enjoy running one-shots and have done a few of them, and I intend to do a few more in future, although the stories do tend to be a little simpler by necessity, and you have less time to explore character development and the setting. Question 11. How much fantasy versus realism do you apply to most of your games? Well, I'm definitely more on the fantasy side of the force, to be perfectly honest. I'm not a fan of games that try and simulate reality in an accurate way. I mean, I live in reality 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Rolling bucket loads of dice to try and recreate that on paper really does not appeal to me, whereas running across a city skyline, leaping roof to roof to escape the governor's evil guards, or delving for ancient lost technology in the forgotten corners of the Ninth World, now that does appeal to me. Question number 12. Do you prefer running modules, hacking modules, or running your own story? Well, I generally prefer to run my own stories. When I'm running a module, I find myself customising it to such a degree anyway to make it fit my version of a game world and a particular group that I may as well have just actually designed something from scratch. Question 13. What gaming system has gotten you the best results? And tell us about it. Well, it'll come as no surprise that I'm going to say the Fate RPG, definitely. It gives me the flexibility to run numerous genres, both in campaign form and one-shots. There is a vast array of source and rules materials available for it, a lot of which is cheap or free, and the rules are simple enough to be grasped quickly, but well designed enough to cover most situations without recourse to tacked-on or clunky subsystems. 14. What method has got you the best results? And tell us about it. Well, I find that creating a setting with input from the players and building the campaign together results in an organic, naturally flowing stream of plot that gives you the best results for a particular group. Since, after all, if you create something from the best ideas of all the people involved, there is bound to be at least something in the game that everyone will enjoy. Question 15. What got you running into these kind of games? Well, I got into running these more collaborative style of games when I realised that in some of my older campaigns I'd almost exhausted myself writing reams and reams of campaign notes and detailing worlds, NPCs, plots, etc., only for me to lose sight of what it was that the players were actually interested in, what my characters were interested. It took me a while to get the balance between player and GM enjoyment right, and I still don't think I've got it 100% right. After all, there's always room for improvement, but this was helped by my discovery of more narrative and collaborative games like Dungeon World and Fate. And finally, question 16, who are you tagging? Well, I apologise if any of you have been tagged already, but I'm going to tag my fellow Fatehead David, Sems and Cheppy from Fallen Trodden. I'm also going to tag Guildmouse, Liz C from Angry Hamster Publishing, and my friends at Dungeons and Drinking. And I'll send you all a message shortly to let you know that I've tagged yourselves in this video. I hope if you've enjoyed this video, guys, you'll give it a thumbs up and click on the red dice up in the corner there to subscribe to my channel. Until I see you in my next video, if you have any comments on this, hit them down below or hit me up in the Google Plus links. I really do enjoy reading what you write. Take care and happy gaming.